Welcome everybody, welcome back to pingshells.com. It is Saturday, May the 16th, 2020, and welcome back to the part 4 of Python Pandas Data Cleaning COVID-19 live data. Now what this started as was a simple script to grab some live data for from a public API, using the novel COVID API website, which I go over in part 2. Here's my development site here, and I just now put up part 3 at the site, but it is an embedded link from this, which is my YouTube channel for Ping Shells. I have a couple of other YouTube channels. The other one is called The Maker's Path, and that's my personal site where I've got all kinds of stuff. I made some archery gear. I'm in the middle of a boat build. The boat is stored somewhere else, but it's a long saga. I've got a bunch of videos for all kinds of things up there that I've made, and some of the activities and adventures that I do. But this one is related to the coding here, and software, basically hacking some public data and hacking together this Python script, which up here I didn't put arrows beside it, but I thought I'd start at the top of the file again. I did have to do a couple more imports in terms of modifying this script even more. And again, I just point out at the top, GNU GPL version 3. If you're ever going to put this stuff up like I am in a screencast or your own code, GitHub, of course, this will eventually end up at my GitHub. But I want it to be actually useful and sort of more complete. I'd like to add a few more features because I don't have a coding freelance gig at the moment. So I do some stuff with SEO, like driven content, a little bit of data analytics, just freelance, and some web geek stuff. But I'm not at the level where I can just run my own agency, so I tend to just pick up odd freelance things once in a while, in addition to my day job as well. So I also had to import base 64, and I still have yet to use GeoPandas in this script. That's why I'm kind of holding out to get a system through which I can get the data and the plots to a web page format, because that seems to be the simplest, quickest way to share data and some sort of web-based service that you can do. Most people honestly don't want to have to get downloads and stuff like that. They just want to go to a website and get their stuff, log in maybe. So I may create a login around this application. So let's keep moving on here. I don't want to make an hour-long video. The script is getting pretty large, though. As you can see, I've made some changes. Even with the initial app root, I basically defined a dashboard.html. So some of the keeners that have watched the other 2 or 3 videos will right away see that I have divided out and I've created the global data a separate page for it. Most of this is the same or very similar. There was the first one that I made the most significant changes, the first function, and AppRoot is the Canadian Historical 30-day. Not only the table, but also the 30-day bar chart. Now, what my big plan was in my previous video was to attempt to get the plot itself to go also to the web page, but hopefully to the same web page that the table is on, because that way you can have them match it up. You can look at the date and then look at the actual table number, so that it helps you read it off the graph as well. You can get the exact number. Yeah, right in here, I'll try to use the mouse here. I wanted to convert the frame to HTML and save that to a local file. We had that going on in the last video. And then I want to send the image data for the 30-day plot directly to the Canadian, right here, Canadian Historical HTML AppRoot. Now, here's one of the problems I had. I worked on this Friday, or yeah, Saturday now, but I worked on this a bit yesterday as well, and then a little bit this afternoon. The problem here is that it's all very well and good to save the HTML or Python data frame to HTML data as an HTML file. Wonderful. That worked fine, but I wanted to add the image to this file as well. So, I don't know whether you call this a hack or a workaround, but I essentially put a string here assigned to the variable, and this is essentially what you need to do to show the data that was read in as a PNG graphics file using plot URL. So yeah, it adds this string to the HTML file, and I wrote it down here, very tricky string concatenation to move to simply join the data frame HTML, the stuff that was produced by the backend HTML conversion module in Python Pandas. I just simply combined that string to display the image on the page as the data frame to HTML table. A pretty crazy simple way to do it. It took me a while to get to that. I tried a couple of different weird ways to convert this. I even tried, I write down here that I ended up doing it this way after several attempts to use something called send file. I was trying to send the file to the page or to an AppRoot, but that seemed to want to require a return statement as well. And then I ended up taking all this stuff out of this function and then trying to do a whole separate route for it, but then none of this was globally defined. It's connected to this. It's already assigned, or like here's where it starts to be defined up here, what those variables are. And then as I bring the variables down and crank them into the plot part of it, it falls apart when you try to bring the plot outside of that, away from the data frame that you created up here. Very simple basic stuff that initially I tried to do and then realized that I have a scope problem, variable scope problem. Kind of a beginner mistake, but luckily I didn't waste too much time on it. I just realized, oh, that's going to be like very cumbersome, because then I would have to redefine all this stuff and then re-grab that data in the separate function. Frustrating. So I found a good way to do it. Everybody can have a look at this. Hopefully I get a few guys that do a little bit of this type of coding that can even offer me some help. But this worked, and it worked really well. So it renders the template. It's not super pretty in terms of web design, but it does get the data out there. And you can look at the image on the page with the table, and you can right click and save the image. You can enlarge it. It's pretty good. And there's this, I basically repeated the same kind of process with the USA 30-day historical data. So that worked out good. Quite often with this kind of functional prototyping, the way I do it, I really like that I can reuse the process on another data set down here. I didn't have to reinvent it. Once I got it to work once, I did the same trick right here. So here's the HTML string equals blah blah. I didn't even change that part. This part's a little different because it's the USA data frame. And then there's that string concatenation. Yay, Python. It just jams them together, and then I was able to read it into the write function here. Basic file operations. But unfortunately, this write will only take one argument. So that was the problem I had in getting this one to work so well. Initially, when I tried it, I thought, oh man, that should work. But I tried to give it the two arguments, both the data frame to HTML table plus the image from the plot. But it's all good. The plot savefig image format PNG, that stuff all worked, and this was pretty freaky. I originally tried it, and then I did a stupid, this is why I don't code actively. Like if I was trying to type all this live while I'm doing this video, I would have spent the whole video trying to debug this part. What happened is I had a capital B here. So stupid, and the thing kept hanging up, and I didn't notice it, and I'm like, I try to, whatever, just waste time. And then I realized, oh my goodness. So pretty, let's see what it looks like. We'll get out of that, and again, pretty pleased. I have one subscriber who I think is some weird punk in Winnipeg or something, but I really need some subscribers for my my coding YouTube channel. So help me out, guys. Yeah, 3-part, and then let's get a new browser window ready, and I've got too many commands here, so okay, again, we see the Flask, the mighty Flask development server. So let's try our local address, as we're familiar from the other videos. Land that, and something I didn't even talk about in the video this far, I also added, not only did I get these things to load the image from the pandas plot with the data frame table, loaded those together, I added a very minimal, as you can see, dashboard. Simple, no-brainer, just a little client dashboard that if I had more stuff to offer, I could just plug it in here. I was thinking maybe a couple of news headlines to put this stuff into context. But essentially, for example, like before, we can load the global stacks there. It's just a little easier than trying to remember what these files were saved as. So it's essentially starting to look a little bit like a web app. And here we can go to there's the Canada 30-day historical table, and then down here we see the graph. The graph is on the same page in the Flask app root. This is really cool. And I can right click on this, view the image, go for Control plus 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 plus, and I can see any size of the image that I want. I could right click and save the image. Boom. So there you go. Pretty easy stuff. I can go back to the page. Obviously I would like to format backlinks or something, but for now this works quite well. Get back to the dashboard. Very simple stuff. And again, the easy, the global one, nice clean table, no drama. I can just see what happened today. Today. Globally, 358 people. So that's the time we're in. Like, this is probably a brand new day. A couple hours into a brand new day when it's updated. Here's the 8-country comparison table. What I noticed earlier today was Russia is really starting to pick up, like their cases and their deaths. Like over 2,000 people in like one day, beginning of one day. So there it is. There's the USA historical, and again they had so they're up to 8,800, 88,000 deaths. Brutal. There's their chart. Make it a bit bigger so you can see it. Yeah, 1.4 million. Well over that now. Just look at, still climbing. Same angle. There's a little bit of a dip here, but yeah, just chugging along. Wow. And these aren't getting any smaller either. The death rate luckily is kind of flattening, which is good, and the recovery is going up. So there are positive signs in the US, but with them opening, I don't see these really dropping. And the case rate will keep going up. Yep. Well, there you go. There's a quick look at some very specific data that has been collected from a public API. Like, this is just data I was interested in. Like, I wanted a quick overview of Canada and the US. That's our closest. I'm Canadian, so the US is of interest to me, of course. They are our most trusted neighbor and ally, and anything that happens to them affects us, both politically, economically, culturally. So this chart or this little table is also very helpful because it shows a good selection, cross section: China, Russia, Japan, that area of the world, a little bit of Europe, and then Canada and the USA. I would like to put in possibly Brazil and a few others, but I didn't want to get carried away with the minutiae of the details. What I wanted to do was to just take a script and run with it all the way. I thought it would be something I have done before on occasion. When I get a script that starts to get a little more interesting, I would tend to break it up into functions and then see if there's any other, features I might want to add. And would I want to create it as a web app, like some kind of a web service, or, this basically is a nice little tiny simple minimal bootstrapped dashboard that is actually serving dynamic data. It's updated probably a couple times a day, most of these stats from Worldometer. I should put like footnotes right here, Worldometer and John Hopkins references for where this data actually comes from, even though it's hosted on that COVID novel COVID API website, which is a lot of JSON, it's a lot of JavaScript stuff. There are many great dashboards like this, like as boilerplate code and Bootstrap. Feel free to look some of those up. I didn't even save the link where I grabbed this one, and I changed some of the colors and stuff, which was easy enough. Changing the links, I could actually jam in here very small like icons or little thumbnails of the graphs, something like that. And I don't know if I want to keep going with this. Maybe I could do, learn something here with video. Could even embed some stuff. But again, this is not something I would really need to commercialize, because there already are several free COVID-19 kind of data dashboards that are doing very well. Hosted, in fact, by John Hopkins, I believe. But anyway, this was a good way to learn the process of serving some live data, hacking a bit of public live data, and serving it up, cleaning it, basically getting a couple of visualizations started so that you can visualize it a bit. It may or may not provide insights looking at the raw numbers, but I could do all kinds of stuff with the cases. Could look at the 10-day moving average. There's all kinds of little statistical plots I could do that would in fact give us some insight as to the rate of change of these variables, whether or not the people are recovering faster or more people are recovering each week, this kind of stuff. You could get a real sense of the pace of change, and that's really what people are striving for when we look at problems like this, rates of change and all that kind of calculus stuff that I took in school. So there you go, very quick Bootstrap little web app that happened just because I was stubborn and would not leave this script as a 20-liner. What's really interesting is that through the whole thing, while I'm serving these pages, I am still getting my obsessive compulsive data frames sent right out to the bash shell, right out to the console here. So you've got the global. Here's the list of countries of interest. I even put in these little lines printout to explain what it is. And then USA 30-day. Back here, get the list again. Every time the page is served, I get the console or terminal bash shell output. Pretty interesting. Thank you very much for stopping by and checking out the changes I've made to the script. And pretty please, once again, subscribe to my channel. Check out my site. Drop me your email. Thanks, guys.